Teachers of Reddit, what is the most ridiculous thing you have heard a parent say? Had an Asian kid that was acing everything. Straight A's. I told his mother that I think he is a little bored. She puffed up and said I will go home and speak to him about that at once. Next story. Here's my favorite ridiculous parent story with a happy ending. Kid obviously forges signature of dad on a failed test. Teacher calls the kid out on it. Dad comes in and insists that it is in fact his signature. His little prince can't get in trouble after all. 2 weeks or so later the dad comes into school outraged that he hasn't been informed of the big project causing the little prince so much stress. But you have been informed, says the teacher. Here's the slip I sent home for all the parents, and that's your signature, right? Right, says dad. Edit to answer questions. This was middle school. The parental signing of tests at that age is not uncommon, especially in a private school. The big project was a science fair-esque experiment, exactly the type of thing parents insist on knowing about. I taught the kid, but as the username suggests I teach Spanish. We had weekly grade level meetings and every week this young man was discussed, mostly unhappily. I can still see the look of sad resignation on my former colleague's face as she told of the first conversation, righteous vindication following the second. So many forgers. Next story. My wife is an elementary school teacher and suspected that one of her students may be autistic. The kid wouldn't communicate well at all, had issues with using the bathroom, and showed other classic signs of autism. My wife had a conference with the mother and explained that she would like him to be evaluated, but the mother refused and said that if her son did have autism, my wife was the one who caused it. I'm not a teacher, but I coach my kids' youth sports teams. I once had a dad approach me and bribe me, $50, to prevent a certain kid from playing in our upcoming flag football game. These were 6-year-old kids. The kid did make a costly mistake in the previous game, but the fact that this random dad was willing to pay me to bench the kid was mind-blowing. Edit, I should have made it clear that I did not accept the money. The dad attempted to bribe me and I turned it down for obvious reasons. Next story. My son is 23 and just started recently as a high school English teacher. He's teaching summer school right now and a parent asked if he could stop dressing so well / if there was an older teacher available because his daughter won't stop talking about how handsome her teacher is. Next story. It's not your job to teach my son lessons. I kid you not. Next story. This family was incredibly well off. The little girl wore Matilda Jane clothing every single day, which is expensive. The individual pieces are between $40 to $60. She almost never wore the same thing twice. Compare her to a little boy in my class. His dad was in and out of jail, he always wore dirty jeans and the same pair of boots. His mom cut his hair and you could tell. But he was full of personality. All the kids wanted to play with him. He got a little rowdy and did say some lightly inappropriate things like that's tough. Or what the hell. But I would never peg him as a behaviorally challenged kid. Well, the rich mother approached my lead teacher and flat out demanded that her little girl never have contact with this boy because he was a bad influence. She wasn't to sit by him or speak to him or play with him. When we refused, she gave all these instructions to her daughter, who would approach the little boy and announce over the whole class, "You have to leave here so I can play. People never cease to piss me off." Next story. At parents' evening. Don't worry about my daughter, she's thick. She only needs to cook and clean. How is my son doing? Next story. For the taxes we pay, we expect our teachers to get our kids into any college we want. Next story. Parents' evening last year. Year 10, so 14-15 years old. Told a woman that her son was doing really well in English and was very bright. She actually scoffed and said, "Really?" The boy was sat there too. I asked what he was thinking of doing when he left school and he said he wanted to go to college to do A-levels. Kids at this school had ridiculously low aspirations, so this was music to my ears. His mother interjected and said, No, you're doing an apprenticeship. You're gonna be a plasterer like your dad." Now I have no problem with kids taking the vocational path as opposed to the academic. But this kid had a chance. And he wanted to take it. But his own mom made him feel that there was no point. So sad. Edit, had a few messages saying that I obviously value the academic choice over vocational. That's not what I'm saying at all. I apologize if I phrased my point in a way that suggested that. I just meant that this particular pupil wanted to go to college and take his A-levels, but his mom made it clear that she didn't think he was bright enough and that it wasn't a worthwhile choice. I just felt it should have been up to him and I could see it lowered his confidence. God, my fiancé left school at 16, worked in a shop and now drives lorries. And earns £10,000 more than I do as a teacher. So I definitely don't think that everyone needs to go on to higher education. I do think that people should be allowed to follow their passion and do whatever they feel is best for them. Next story. Had a star athlete who was being recruited by Ivy League schools failing my English class. On top of his general poor academic performance, I also caught him cheating on a homework assignment which he vehemently denied. His mom scheduled a meeting with an administrator and proceeded to berate me and to accuse me of discriminating against student athletes. I was the pep club sponsor at the time. Then she said her son would never cheat. I pulled out his homework and proceeded to read one of his answers. As a 16-year-old girl. Mom then begins yelling at him, "You can't even cheat right. What's wrong with you? How are you going to get into college if you can't cheat?" Op replies, "What the F? What is wrong with some of these parents? I admit I have cheated on a few exams but I never got caught. I'm not proud of it though. In college I had a pre-calculus professor who was terrible at teaching that most of the class would cheat on tests purely out of desperation. We couldn't complain because she had tenure. Although, I have never cheated on a homework assignment. By the way, getting caught cheating in high school is different than getting caught cheating in college. In college the consequences are serious. Next story. This finally inspired me to make an account. Multiple times over the school year, she emailed me with something like, "My child has been coming home saying she has no homework in your class. I believe she should be having homework from your class every day. Can you please give her some homework?" There was actually homework. The kid was not turning in any homework that quarter. The zeros were all reflected in the online grade report, which the parent apparently refused to read. Spanish class. Parent asked me to exempt her kid from speaking anything in Spanish. Said it made her daughter uncomfortable to say anything in Spanish. Next story. Every single adult should know where every single child is on campus at all times. The mom said, yelling at me. I had been giving her son extra help after school, along with some other students. We were 6 weeks in and mom hadn't come to back to school night or made any attempt to speak to or contact me. She came to pick up her son and had no idea where to go because she hadn't been to our school before or read the after-school group flyer. Instead, she yelled at some other teachers who were waiting out in the front of the school with some of their own after-school students to be picked up. They had no idea who she was or who her child was. She couldn't ask them where my class was because she didn't even know the name of her child's teacher. I walked up with her son as this was happening. She turned and continued to chew me out. She said a lot of ridiculous things that day. It was complete and blatant projection of irresponsibility. Next story. At the end of each year all the students' merits are tallied up and the top 3 students get a prize. One of the parents was complaining about how it's unfair their child started so low every year, it was a lot harder for them to get to the top. The list starts alphabetized. Next story. My mother is a retired college English teacher. Helicopter parents would regularly call to inquire about their kids' grades. Mom, that's confidential as per college policy. If you want to learn your child's grade, you're going to have to ask him/her. Parent, but I'm paying his/her's tuition. Mom, it doesn't matter. Your child has a right to privacy. I can/will only discuss your child's grade with him/her. Parent, I'm calling the dean. Mom, by all means. Rinse and repeat, over and over and over.